think I'm now handing over to Phil and Lisa, who are the quiz masters.
Yeah, it's gonna be good cop, bad cop. I'm gonna be Jeremy Paxman, and this is Kirsty Walk. So she's more. So our job is to ask questions of the panel. We've got questions that we're going to ask, and I've said to them it'll be really easy, but I'm going to be like Jeremy. Answer the question. But the first question is really. So this is all about well-being, and we'll take it in turns. What the first question is, maybe just to also introduce yourself, and also say what, and Tim, you're exempt from this one because you've already done this, but what, explain who you're representing, the organisation or the department or whatever you're representing, but how are you contributing to the well-being of the population of South Ayrshire, and maybe particularly of Troon? So start with Jackie, and you introduce yourself, and we'll go along that way.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me along today. My name's Jackie Burns. I'm one of the consultants within the Public Health Department for NHS Ayrshire and Arran. So I'm here representing our Public Health Department and perhaps also some of our wider partners within NHS Ayrshire and Arran. So in terms of the question and how do we support wellbeing, I think that public health are often the unseen face of the NHS. Working very closely has already been described today in the background, focusing on what can we deliver for our communities, for our population, to prevent ill health, to promote improving your own health, and then also to safeguard those who do experience poorer outcomes in health. So I think that's really our central role and purpose as a department. And I think the really important point is how do we take our Ayrshire-wide approach but tailor that to the needs of communities and localities. So understanding what are the principles, the evidence and the data, but then actually how do we translate that, and that's through those conversations, relationships and listening to what people are saying to us. So thank you very much.
That's great, yeah. So Alan, same question.
Hi folks, I'm Alan Dodds. I am the Community Wellbeing and Partnerships Inspector for Ayrshire, and how we are involved with wellbeing is we've created a Community Wellbeing Department we're the only one in Scotland that has one. So we've dedicated officers whose role is to ensure that members of the public get access to the right services at the right time. So we collaborate with our partners, statutory, third sector, to ensure that when people have moments of crisis, it might not happen between 8 and 4, it can be 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning. So therefore our role is to pick that up when we come in the morning and make sure that we can signpost them to the right people. We work with the various groups as well, such as Gavin, working for Wollaston in the background, we're heavily involved with them. So it's beneficial to the community, but it's also beneficial to us because we see a drop in call volume to the police, which shows that people are getting to see the right people at the right time.
Thanks. On to Jamie.
Thanks, Phil. I'm Jamie Tate. I'm the service lead for Thriving Communities within South Ayrshire Council. So here today representing the council, but focusing on thriving communities. For those that don't know, Thriving Communities, within the council, we have got the Health and Wellbeing team, Employability, Community Safety, Community Learning Development, and did I say Employability possibly? So again, as you can see, they serve a broad range of services supporting our community right across South Ayrshire. In terms of wellbeing, our Health and Wellbeing team are in our schools, are in our communities working with young people. They're in our sheltered housing complexes working with older people, so that full life cycle supporting active living. We've also got a clear focus on active travel, so again looking at new initiatives to promote active travel across South Ayrshire. Within our CLD team, again listening to what communities need and how we can support them to access services. Also delivering youth work programmes and adult learning programmes, and I suppose employability, it speaks for itself, getting people into work or volunteering opportunities. The health and wellbeing benefits are clear around about employability. So again, a broad range of services. The big thing I suppose also to mention about the services, we're probably an enabling service, so linking communities to access other services, and also more recently the partnership with the third sector, really helping promote a strong partnership with the third sector.
Thanks, Jamie. Oh, you've got the mic. So, Kevin.
always carry one with me. Good morning, everyone. My name's Kevin Anderson, and I'm the Assistant Director for Policy, Strategy and Performance with the Council. Now, within that very vague job title, I wear a number of different hats. Community planning, as Tim mentioned earlier, but also housing strategy, corporate policy, and things like sustainability and climate change. And what I really like about well-being is it's a term that doesn't need defined and everyone seems to understand. And actually, it's very much the why of why we deliver services at the council and at the community planning level. It's the why. It's to help people with well-being. So I think from a council perspective, from a community planning perspective, from a corporate perspective, well-being is a term that can unite us in that sort of common journey.
Thanks. Do you just want to, Tim alluded to it just before I come to Angela, do you want to say something about the local outcome improvement plan and the fact that place and wellbeing are at the heart of that?
Yeah, so absolutely. So we were part of a programme called Place and Wellbeing Outcomes, which was run through the Scottish Government and the improvement services, and it was about really trying to look at places as unique circumstances and not trying to have this broad brush approach to everything, but also the why of why we're looking at a place in that way is about well-being and the well-being of our communities. So that idea has really taken hold within the council. So we've got our council plan, our 5-year strategic plan. At the very top of that is place and wellbeing and understanding, giving us a framework to come and work together. And likewise with our local outcome improvement plan, which is a community planning document which brings not just the council but the health and social care partnership, the NHS, the police, public health, everyone together. And right at the top of that again is also place and wellbeing. So what we're trying to do is align ourselves together. So instead of trying to fall over each other to deliver services, that we're all as aligned as we can be and working for our communities in the best way possible.
Brilliant, thanks. Kevin, and over to Angela.
Thank you. I'm Angela McWhinney, Deputy Chief Officer at Voluntary Action South Ayrshire, or better known as VASA. So I'm kind of here to sort of represent the whole of the third sector, which is the voluntary sector in South Ayrshire. Wellbeing, I think I probably have to take it to two angles. It's the internal for us and also the external. So internally, wellbeing for us is about ensuring our staff are happy, comfortable in the environment they work in. We are huge advocates, obviously, of volunteering, so it's ensuring our volunteers as well, that we're listening to them. And I think that's real listening to make sure that we are actually adapting things for people's wellbeing. There's our service users as well. We will go on above and beyond, and I think I can speak for the whole of the third sector here and say that that is what we do. That's what we've always done. Most of us are in our job because we actually want to make a difference to people. And then I think externally, I think it's about us championing that culture of change where people do take a bit of responsibility for their own well-being as well. Tim's touched on the ageing well and other strategies that's going on and other things that we're getting involved in from the voluntary sector's point of view. So we'll just keep chipping away at that and try and improving it as the years go on. And that's me.
So, morning everybody, my name's Lisa McAlpine, I'm the Senior Manager. Better look in the Kirsty Walk. So my name's Lisa McAlpine, I'm the Senior Manager for the North locality for the Health and Social Care Partnership. So my role, I suppose, within the Health and Social Care Partnership is to lead and really take forward and implement that strategic vision and the operational approach to team around the locality and all the wellbeing pledge and all the stuff that Tim's already touched on. So the question we have for the panel this morning is building on the first question in terms of your organisation and really focusing on Tim's last slide, just key about relationships. What are the opportunities there to ensure that we're achieving this together with our partners and our communities in terms of the wellbeing pledge?
Yeah, so you start with the easy questions. Yeah. So I suppose as I would say, I think in many respects we're at the end of the beginning of a process. Somebody said that once before. I think we've laid a lot of groundwork in terms of the wellbeing pledge, beginning to sort of socialise some of the ideas that we've got as a partnership. Again, just talking before the session about again, quoting another leader, I'm going to steal your phrase, Kevin. Getting a coalition of the willing together. I think there are a lot of people in public and independent and private service that are really interested in new ways of engaging with people, moving away from that notion that services sort of descend on people when they need them. I think the work that I referred to and others have talked about in terms of the community planning partnership is still in its infancy, but I think what we're seeing is a huge enthusiasm for new ways of working built on those relationships that I was referring to. I don't know if anybody else wants to come in on that one.
Yeah, in terms of relationships, I think the relationships at a local level and also a strategic level it needs to happen. If the relationships are not there, we go back into working in our silos, and I think we've certainly moved away from that in the last couple of years. Although COVID was challenging, I think COVID focused the council certainly to work alongside the third sector and health and social care, and I think we've really built on from COVID. I think moving forward, I think our new locality approach, our community plan, the local outcome improvement plan, I think we're in a really strong position. But I think as Tim had said, we've laid a lot of foundations. It's about how we move forward. Even Thriving Communities we set in 2021, it's evolving. We need to continue to develop new ways of working. As a council, we can't continue to do what we've done over the last few years. But I think we're in a really, really good position in South Ayrshire, and I think Tim touched on some of the good work that's already taken place.
Relationship-wise, for myself, being involved in the voluntary sector and working for VASA for the past 12 years, I've seen a huge increase in the relationship, and it's a really good place we're at just now, I think, between the sector and the health and social care and the council. And I think we need to build on that, ensure that there's seats round the table for all the relevant people, and that there's open, honest, transparent conversations, and that we're listened to. And I think there's opportunity to make changes quickly. If we can identify that something isn't working, I think we need to act on it a lot quicker than sometimes we have in the past.
And I think I maybe want to pick on something that you had said in your first response about our staff, and recognising that our staff are our biggest assets in the community. I think all of us on the panel today would recognise that we sit at a strategic level. We're not the doers, we're the thinkers and the speakers sometimes. We're those visible voices of our organisations. But it's really our staff on that front line working with people in the community who are the real agents of change in communities. So I think there's that bit of how do we have that listening voice for our staff? How do we create space for our staff to be as efficient within their roles, to have the agency over how they deliver their services to best meet the needs of their communities. So I think there's a real opportunity there for us to really walk the walk, that we really need to translate what we're talking about in these types of forums, and so that our staff can see that at that operational level. So I think that really comes back down to the relationships at all level, and how do we foster those relationships and culture from the ground up.
So not a whole lot to add to the brilliant comments so far. I suppose I would just think, when we're working with people, which is what we're really in the business of doing, is working with people, they're not divided into health and social care and housing and different departments within themselves. They're people. So just because the Scottish Government or the UK Government have said this is your budget for that, and this is your budget for that, and this is your budget for that, it's really for us to bring that together as a partnership, and that's based on the relationships, not just at that strategic level, but that needs to flow right the way through the system, and we need to encourage people to come and work together and find that common purpose between each other.
Thanks very much. And thanks also for being quite brief as well. It's quite good, because we were thinking we might have to cut people off, but you've been superb. The next one's really around thinking more around priorities within wellbeing. I'm thinking probably in particular around inequality. So where would you see, because we could do a lot of really nice wellbeing-y sort of stuff, and actually increase inequality because we're not targeted, we're not been mindful of where people have worse well-being. So maybe starting with Jackie from a public health perspective, but what about how do we target what we're doing around well-being so that we don't inadvertently create more inequality?
Yes, and I think everything we would come back to what do we know works? And I think that there's some of you in the audience might be aware of the work of Michael Marmot. I was at a conference at the start of this month where he was talking about the work that he's been doing in England, looking at local authority spending and recognising that where budgets are tight, where budgets are cut, often those who are the most disadvantaged to start with are the ones who suffer the most, and that actually those areas are the ones that are cut first and cut hardest. So I think being mindful of that, I think having this common understanding of what we're trying to achieve across partnership agencies is really key. Being open to challenge, being open to saying, will this achieve what we think it will achieve? And again, pulling on one of his key theories that he promotes is that idea of proportionate universalism, which sounds very complicated, but at its heart, it's we need to deliver the basics to everyone, but we also then need to recognise who needs the most support and what that support looks like. So it comes back to that idea of what matters to you. What does good look like for you? And how do we merge that together with what we are funded and commissioned to deliver, but then also what do we have the agency to deliver? And again, it comes back to that locality level. So where are our areas? And what is needed, say, in Troon will be different from Girvan. They are two different communities with two different needs, with two different sets of resources. So how can we adapt and deliver in a different way to meet those specific needs? And that's not an easy thing to do all the time because we are expected to deliver, for us as Ayrshire wide, but then how do we actually translate that? And that's the real challenging part for any organisation. But I think the open, honest communication, common understanding of what we're trying to achieve, and a real focus on what do we know already works is key for that.
Thanks, Jackie. And can I go to Alan? And you alluded to that around the working you're doing, for instance, around Wallistown, where the relationship, where you've got particular challenges and people with kind of fairly chaotic lifestyles. So maybe say something about that, how you've particularly applied into areas of difficulty.
I think for us, we reach out to all people. So when someone telephones us and we can become an advocate for that person, we can signpost them to a partner. But what we find is the frustration sometimes is they may go to who they think's the best person, and that's not the best person. So that door then closes. We can be there then to tie in with another group, another organisation, and find the right person for them. And for us, inequality falls into various categories. We've got vulnerability, we've got people who prey on the elderly through bogus collars, fixing your roof. We've got people with substance abuse problems. So we deal with all different facets of society and how we then signpost into the right person at the right time. And it's just through the partners here.
Yeah,
that works for us.
So it's really the relationships as well. It's founded upon you.
Completely.
You have to work with that. So I'm going to Tim because he always says that as well. So
yeah, well, I grabbed the mic as well. So behind your question is that there are a number of paradoxes, aren't there? So if we use the example, there are many examples where people who are better off, more informed, are able to access services to improve their well-being. So if we use the example that will be known to many of you, breastfeeding. In terms of the work that we do in terms of supporting breastfeeding, actually it tends to be the better off, the more middle class who kind of improve breastfeeding rates and so on, and the people who are poorest or live in the most deprived communities, our effort doesn't kind of reach them. So we recognise that there are paradoxes there. Really, one of the things that I just kind of wanted to pick up, and it follows on from something that I alluded to in the sort of opening comments. One of the ironies is that some of the most needy people see the biggest investment in terms of services, so us. So we're kind of crowding round them one way or another in terms of social workers and health staff and the voluntary sector services that we commission and provide for them. And you'll have seen examples of this before, families in huge distress or individuals in huge distress as a consequence of alcohol or drug or other mental health issues and so on, where actually the state provides a lot of paid service. And we're not actually improving things at all for those people quite often, who we just kind of continue and perpetuate people's the inequality in terms of their ability to make a contribution or to sort things out for themselves. And I think one of the things that we need to do is to completely rethink how we engage with people that are most vulnerable. And again, that comes back to that sort of liberation method issue, where we need to get much more alongside people rather than dipping in and out. And again, it's about building a trusted relationship with somebody who's then able to help somebody make a difference in their own life. So I think that's the kind of next bit for us, for people who are furthest away from being able to engage in civil society.
Yeah. Any other comments? Jamie, do you want to come in, and Angela?
Yep, so I suppose just one of the roles that I've got is the chair of the Financial Inclusion and Growth Partnership within Community Planning Partnership. And I think it's an excellent example where we talk about relationships, we're talking about addressing inequality, we're talking about budgets being shared across the Community Planning Partnership. So the Council committed just over £1 million to support financial inclusion projects. So again, that funding was allocated to the Financial Inclusion Partnership. So a range of partners, organisations as part of that group. And again, the projects, it's a broad range of projects supporting local food pantries, supporting people who are in crisis within housing, supporting additional staffing around Information Advice Hub. And we've also got a project where young people have identified that the cost of living is the most important topic and issue for them. So what the councils have actually agreed is a small allocation for young people to go away and come up with a project or an initiative that they can then develop. So I suppose for me, going back to that relationship, identifying what communities need, identifying what partners need as well, coming to a forum and saying, here's an allocation of funding, how can we support, rather than 3 or 4 people sitting within a room, which probably happened 10, 15 years ago, and how we're going to distribute and carve up funding to different services. So I think it's just an excellent example, a more recent example, and we're really interested to see how the projects evolve.
No, thanks, Jim. They're really good examples there. Kevin and Angela, do you want to say something?
Just on priorities, I think there's been lots of talk, and it's been mentioned that this is the second year rolling this out, and there's a strategic level, and then there's the action plans, and there's the talking, and there's the putting things on posters to try and engage with people. But I think one of the priorities is to try and better that engagement, and maybe focus on, when we're talking about inequalities, the people that perhaps don't automatically engage with the services that are going to tell you about the Wellbeing Pledge and what you're meant to do to help yourself. So for myself, coming in at a different angle, I think it's about being on the ground and going to the people that otherwise wouldn't engage. So go to the bookies and tell them, go to the hairdressers, go to the pub, go and get actually to these people, because it's a two-way street with the Wellbeing Pledge. They have to understand that there is an expectation, but they're not going to know it if nobody's there to tell them. So for myself, I think there's an element for, in particular, the voluntary sector as well, who are more on the ground, to actually get that message across.
Thanks, Angela. So I want to pick up on something, not the go to the pub, which was very tempting, but more so the focus part of this. So we recently developed in the community planning team the child poverty strategy, which was in working with lots of different partners in public health to try and see, like, how do we try and tackle this massive issue. And it is a massive issue. And I think what we recognised was we can't solve child poverty from the council, from the community planning partnership, because there's so many other things that contribute towards that. But for those of you who know John Carnochan, who set up the Violence Reduction Unit in Glasgow, he's got a saying that is, start where you are and do what you can. So what we decided as a partnership is, let's find the areas that we can focus on. So that big high level number of child poverty we can't probably influence too much. But there are aspects of the system that we can, and that's where we're going to concentrate our efforts. So focus is so important in what we're doing, and especially when we're trying to target those with the biggest needs.
Okay, panel, last question. You're in the home straight. So, just building on, we know that trying to implement any change, any strategic vision and everything we've spoken about this morning, it's not going to always be rainbows and unicorns. There's going to be some difficulties. So what are the potential challenges or barriers to succeeding the goals in the Wellbeing Pledge? Oh, this is a hard question.
Potential barriers is that the good work that's been done so far falls to the wayside and we don't keep that momentum going. But I think everybody that's involved so far is really keen to keep this going. And I would have to say perhaps bureaucracy. Sometimes we have to try and find ways to get past and make things happen. So for myself, that could be potential challenges going forward. But I'm sure they won't be.
Jamie, when you go.
Yeah, so it's the opposite of what we've just kind of generally been saying. So what has led us to where we are in terms of the success that we've had to date is relationships. And quite often, certainly for me and my team, that has been we've built a team over a wee while. Some really excellent colleagues across the Health and Social Care Partnership, and of course, one of the risks in this kind of work is when key individuals with a lot of knowledge, and Phil's one of them, obviously, for those of you who don't know, retiring soon. But it's not just Phil. It's change in terms of the people from a leadership perspective. What I would say is that allows an opportunity for evolution. Initially, there's a kind of grief process and a kind of how we're going to manage and so on. I think the ideas that we've got are sufficiently well ingrained for us to kind of pursue them as we kind of move forward. But I think it is easy within the kind of current climate where it's very difficult to attract people who have the same values and culture and so on that we probably have from a South Ayrshire perspective. It would be very easy for us to find people going to other places to work and us having gaps and so on. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge. The obvious one that you would expect me to mention is resourcing. I think, again, that's a double-edged sword. I think the way that we're approaching things is actually adversity is the mother of invention, or the father of invention these days. I think I would suggest that we've adapted the way that we do things in order to respond to the fact that we know that resources are tight. That's one of the reasons why we're feeling that it's important that communities have a role in supporting themselves and being resilient. Now, that's not just a sort of, well, you're trying to mask the fact that there are cuts and so on. I know that's the kind of messaging that kind of comes back. Well, the fact that there is no money is a fact of life, so it doesn't really matter whether you like it or not. It is what it is. And therefore, we do need to do things together. But I think the real challenge for me is around about leadership and people, and that there's a risk that diminishes in time, or is affected in time.
Hiya. I've been in the police for 27 years. I know that work at about 27 years. And we have lots of short life working groups. It's this phrase we use a lot now. And when I come into this role, for me it's about sustainability. It's about keeping going. We rebadge things. So I think everyone in this panel, everyone's committed to wellbeing. It's making sure that we have that word at the forefront, and in 2 years' time, someone else doesn't come in, reinvent the wheel, and we start again, and we lose that momentum. That's it. Mic drop.
How do you follow that? So I think one thing that has just been going through my head as we've all been speaking, we've talked about people taking responsibility for their own health, for their own well-being, for their own outcomes. And I think one of the challenges that we need to keep in mind, and I think it was raised about fix what you can fix and recognise what you can't. Education can only go so far. And actually, I think the word that we need to be using is how do we empower people to take control of their own health and well-being. So we can talk about, 5 fruit and veg a day, stop smoking, reduce your alcohol intake. We know all of that. But actually, how do we translate that into practical action? How do we make the healthy choice the easy choice? And I think that's a real challenge for us all as systems and organisations. And I think that really harks back to how do we think differently? How do we do differently? How do we challenge ourselves to be innovators in the space? So it's a challenge, but it's a real opportunity. And I think we need to harness that opportunity. And again, that comes back to communities, individuals, people, and listening.
Yeah, I suppose just to follow on from that, I think when we're talking about doing things differently, and that requires a bit of bravery, it requires a bit of understanding from partners, from colleagues, from press, from councillors, because it won't always work, it won't always get the outcome that we're looking for. But we need to be brave, we need to know that well-being as a unifying approach can bring us all together, and be brave all the way through it. And I think if we get scared or we run away from the criticism, then that's the real risk to this not happening. We need to just be brave and plough forward with our agenda.
I think everyone's covered everything. I suppose there's lots of challenges. Tim has mentioned resources, but I think we need to, in my opinion, I think where we sell short in South Ayrshire is we've heard about some of the great work that's happening. We're not perfect, however there's some fantastic work going on right across our communities, from young people all the way up to our adults. We've got a really strong third sector, we've got really strong community planning partnership, and it's how do we continue on that journey together. And again, just being clear to communities, this is what we're trying to do, but equally as well, not being afraid to say we can't do that, and this is the reason why. And I think that's what communities respect, that honesty. Again, we talk a lot about consultation fatigue. How do we go back to communities and say, this is what you said, this is what we've done, or this is what we've not done? But I think giving that clear messaging across our partners around about wellbeing, and this is the approach, or this is a new approach, or this is what we're going to do. And again, to pick up the other point as well, is continue on that journey. I suppose in the past we've always chopped and changed. Here's a new badge, something else, or change something else. A bit of consistency over the next 5, 10 years. Different initiatives, but again, try and keep consistency and that clear vision that's set out within our strategic and our local plans.
Okay, thanks very much to our panel today. You were spot on in time. I can see Philly's like a coiled spring. He wants final words here.
Parish notices. No, and also, can we just thank the panels for being really clear? That's set a good think tone for the day. So the next set of stuff is going to happen. The marketplace will be open shortly. So if you go out in an orderly fashion, don't trip up at each other. The marketplace will be open. Then also in this room, I think the first one is at 1:15. Is the short presentations. I think the first one's ahead of the curve, which is wonderful work around frailty. So you've got that all through the day. There's sort of 15-minute snippets of stuff, presentations. So please make yourself, come on and see the stuff and hear that. But and also coffee will be on the go. So that's us, I think.